it's been a while since I have done a WTF. Mainly because wrestling sucks anymore. I've gone on record as saying that so many times, but it's gotten bad. And I might go on a little bit of a rant later on down the road. But I was surfing the web, and I actually found, I think it's called like thesportster.com. It's some type of website that I have to look at my lion's head with the pictograph riddles. I'll figure it out later. But I was on a website that had a number of lists, and one of them was their top 20 superstars that were never WWE champion. Now, they even say it in the beginning of it that the world title doesn't matter. You know, it's just the WWE title. And I can see where they come from, because with the way Vince McMahon is, the WWE title was far more superior than the world title. And if you don't believe me, just go back and look at pretty much the entire run of the world title. The only time it meant even a squirt of shit was when Triple H had it. And once Triple H lost the world title, that thing went completely off the rails. It was so bad that, well, I'll put it to you this way. For 3 WrestleManias, the World Heavyweight title was defended in the very first match, and one of those matches, Bryan Danielson versus Sheamus, lasted 17 seconds. So you tell me, you try and argue the fact that the world title was bigger than the WWE title. It wasn't. But their top 20 list. Now, some of these I do agree with. Some of them I do not agree with. But I'm just going to go through, fairly quickly, give my 2 cents. The one other list that I did before, I think it was the worst gimmicks in wrestling, which most of them were mediocre to not that bad. But their top 20. And again, they said some of these guys on here held the world title, but not the WWE title. So number 20 was Christian Cage. And again, I had just, as I'm filming this, he had hosted Raw this past week with Edge. And I didn't even know that he had retired. Apparently he is retired. But, yeah, he never held the world title, or the WWE title. He's held the World Heavyweight title twice. That was pretty much his last big push in wrestling. Which is a shame, too, because Christian Cage, it took so long for them to finally realize this guy actually has charisma. This guy actually has a drawing power. But he never held the WWE title. Which is a damn shame. Because he really didn't actually pick up until he left WWE to go to TNA. And that's why since TNA, I haven't called him anything other than Christian Cage. That's his name. 19, this one I do very heartily agree with. William Regal. Lord Steven Regal. Again, this is a guy that, without question, one of the most underused, underrated wrestlers ever. Even in WCW, he was so underutilized. The guy was a fantastic wrestler. He had a great gimmick. This blue blood from England, who literally from England could come in and show these American wrestlers how it was done. I think the most he ever was in WCW, he was TV champion for a long time. But he had a great run. He was such a fucking great heel. And then, of course, they fucked it over when he first came to the WWF. A lot of people don't know this. When he first came to the WWF, he was called Steven Regal, a man's man. And they put him in all these situations where, like, he was a lumberjack, or He was like he was supposed to be this tough guy, or the quote unquote tough guy, but he really wasn't. Uh, I only remember seeing him as this gimmick once or twice. His theme song was fucking great too. It was almost like a lumberjack song. It was funny. If you look it up, go on YouTube, look up Steven Regal. He's a man. I guess that's what the song's called, but look up that song. It's funny. But the only other time I remember him coming out and doing that, he comes out, he grabs the microphone, and goes, I challenge anyone to come out there and fight me like a man, because that's what I am. I'm a man. And then, of course, he comes back as William Regal, which I did not like at all. And I don't even know if that's his real name. It doesn't matter. But he came out, he tried to do the Lord Steven Regal thing. He eventually became, like, the corrupt commissioner, of course, and kind of faded off into obscurity. I think now he's an agent for the WWF, which, hey, anybody that, can learn anything from him, go for it, because he's one of those guys that sadly could have had a good run with a title if booked properly. Again, I could say that for most of everybody on here, if the booking was just there. 18, Ron Simmons, that's kind of a gimme. On the website, they talked about his time with the Nation of Domination when he was Farouk. And again, nothing but money right there. If this black militant leader who is always bitching about being oppressed all of a sudden wins the world title, you now have somebody that can challenge him and stop him. It writes itself, really. 17, this is another one I really agreed with. Big Van Vader. Vader never held the WWE title. And it's a goddamn shame, too, because when I first saw him in WCW, I said to myself, this guy is a fucking beast. Oh my lord, this guy looked awesome. He had the big helmet, the big mastodon helmet that spit out smoke. He was the perfect heel for anybody to work with. Okay, you know how awesome he was as a heel? For all you youngins out there, this is how good Vader was as a heel. When Ric Flair wrestled him, Ric Flair was the babyface. And in WCW, that was hard to do. Because Ric Flair was the prototypical heel. And then here comes Big Van Vader in. And Vader was one of the only guys to make Ric Flair a good guy. Think about that. And he had a good run in WWF. I guess you could say that. Came in with a lot of fanfare. He broke Yokozuna's leg. He actually had to cart Yokozuna out on a forklift. That was kind of funny. He had a good run with Shawn Michaels, but this was around the time when Shawn Michaels was pretty much the champion. He was calling the shots, and he's like, no way am I going to lose to fucking Vader. Whatever. It doesn't matter who you lose to. It's the money that you make. And that would have made it a lot of money, because they had some good matches. 16, again, I agree with this. Owen Hart. What else more can you say about Owen Hart? I would like to sit down and talk about that a little bit, but yeah, would he have been world champion? I don't know, because from everything that I've read and everything that I've watched, he was pretty much done after his last run as the Blue Blazer. Once he was done with that, it was going to be over. He wanted to retire, but I really would have loved to have seen him as champion. Even as a heel, I would have loved to have seen him as champion. I miss that guy. 15, I had to roll my eyes at this one. Goldberg. My feelings about Goldberg aside, the guy came in, won the World Heavyweight title, and then left a year later. Or within a year, he was gone. I don't like Goldberg. In fact, the night he won the world title in my semi-hometown, Hershey, PA, I was the only one that probably wasn't standing up and cheering the fact that Goldberg had beat Triple H for the title. I don't like him. 14, this one. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this one, but Hacksaw Jim Duggan sucked. Going back and watching him as an adult, you realize, like, God damn, was this guy a goofball? It's something that's so simple, but at the same time, so stupid. I know I sound like such a hypocrite, but I don't like him. I never truly liked Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Even as a kid, he didn't impress me at all. No, he didn't at all. And the way this website talked him up, like he was the first guy to win the very first Royal Rumble, and that was before the winner got a title shot. They didn't start that up until Yokozuna won in 92? 92? No, 93. 93, that's when he won it. And that's when they started the whole thing. But Hacksaw Jim Duggan's work, I can remember at WrestleMania 4 when he was wrestling Ted DiBiase in the first match of the tournament. Jesse Ventura said a great line. He goes, wouldn't it be a disgrace if Jim Duggan won the title? And Gorilla Monsoon says, like, I don't think it would be a disgrace. Jesse says, really? You're telling me you would like Jim Duggan as champion? Oh, absolutely I would. No, you wouldn't. 13, the British Bulldog. You know, the Bulldog as a heel, I could see it. As a good guy, I couldn't. Because, I don't know. I just think he had more of a draw as a bad guy. And he had some good matches. He had a fantastic match with Bret Hart for the WWE title. Again, at Hershey, PA, the old arena. I happened to be there for that one. Really fucking great match. I think it might be on the Bret Hart DVD. I don't know. If it is, I'll have to sit down and watch it again. That was a fucking good match. But, yeah, the British Bulldog. I can see that if he was a heel. As a good guy, not so much. 12, Ravishing Rick Rude. Definitely. Rick Rude, again, is one of those guys that when you go back and watch him as an adult, you appreciate more of what he did. He was, again, the prototypical heel. He was this cocky, good-looking, chiseled fucking guy who always won, who always cheated to win, and then he would pick a girl out of an audience, give her the rude awakening, this big long kiss, and she'd just fall to the ground. And here was a guy who could go into the ring and say, I can take every single one of these women out here from any guy, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that pisses you off. That pisses any guy off. You know, it's that male mentality that you go into a bar with a woman, and the last thing you want is some dude walking over and starting to hit on her while you're sitting right there. You just don't do that. And, of course, you want to fight the guy, and that's how Rick Rude was. I could have so seen Rick Rude as champion. But, again, never pulled it off. 11, Bam Bam Bigelow. Again, definitely. Because Bam Bam was not your normal, everyday big guy. In fact, a lot of people, a lot of wrestlers even agreed that Bam Bam Bigelow, probably pound for pound, one of the best big guys ever. And it's very hard to argue that fact. The most he ever had was he was ECW champion. He was ECW TV champion, and then I think he won a couple of titles in WCW, but never the WWE title. Which is a shame too, because Bam Bam, he could pull it off again if pushed. 10, Superfly Jimmy Snuka. No, I don't see it. I'm sorry. I like Jimmy Snuka. He was one of the pioneers of the high-flying wrestling style, but as a world champion, like with all of these guys, you have to ask yourself, would I really pay money to see a Jimmy Snuka, a Jimmy Snuka world title match? I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. One of my DVDs is the best of steel cage matches. He did have a good match with Bob Backlund for the title. That was back when Jimmy Snuka was a heel. Surprisingly, he was a heel. But I wouldn't. I don't think I would. Again, I like the guy. I got an autograph and a picture with him. So I like Jimmy Snuka. I just don't see him as world champion. That's just my opinion. Number 9, Jerry the King Lawler. I could see it. I really could. Because there was a time when Jerry Lawler was one of the most hated sumbitches in wrestling. He was loved in Memphis. That was his hometown. But anywhere else he went, he was the heel. And when he joined the WWF, he was one of the biggest heels. He had a great feud with Bret Hart for a long time. And everybody, he played the heel like a fiddle. I mean, every single person in that building wanted to see Bret Hart kill Jerry Lawler every time they wrestled. And that's a sign of a good heel. But they even said that when Jerry Lawler joined the WWF, he was about 40 at the time. So they could have given him a quick run with it. But at the end of the day, it probably wasn't feasible. Number 8, this is actually a travesty that this never happened. Ted DiBiase. That was a gimme right there. Ted DiBiase should have been world champion, a WWE champion. Should have been champion, no question about it. When Andre the Giant handed the belt over to Ted DiBiase, they should have made that shit stick. Oh yeah. You couldn't have paid to get better heat than what Ted DiBiase had at the time. The guy was awesome at getting heat. Because again, just like Rick Rude, nobody likes this pompous, arrogant, rich guy coming in and saying, I could buy anything in here. Because I'm rich and you're not. So, fuck you. A travesty that he was never WWE champion. Number 7, this is another one I'm iffy about. Booker T. Booker T was okay. I mean, 5-time WCW champion, sure. But WWE champion, I gotta give him at least a little bit of credit for being one of the last guys from WCW to get over in WWE, because a lot of those guys had problems doing that. Because, again, they're from WCW, and WWE is a completely different world. And for Booker T to get over as much as he did, and only a handful of guys had ever done that, that says a lot. So, I guess you could say maybe put the belt on him, but he had to have a better setup. It would take a lot of work. I'll just say that. It would take a lot of work to get the people behind him in a wrestling angle to where he's challenging at WrestleMania for the belt. It would take a huge undertaking on that. Number 6, Razor Ramon. You know, for as popular as he was, yeah, I could see it. I could see them putting the belt on him. But at the time, he was fighting a lot of demons, I'm sure. I mean, he was part of the Clique, and the Clique were a bunch of Hellraisers. So you really have to look at, personality and professionalism outside the ring as well as inside the ring. You can be the greatest wrestler in the world, but outside the ring, if you're at a bar every night beating people up and drinking till the sun comes up, they're not going to put the belt on you. Doesn't matter how good of a wrestler you are. Ask Chris Jericho about that. Top 5. we've got number 5, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Again, much like Razor Ramon, the guy was over enough that he could have easily been world champion. In fact, he was part of one of the best matches of all time, him and Randy Savage. Don't know why. Don't know why they never put the belt on him, which I think he would have been over enough to at least have one run with it. But, again, what the hell do I know? Number 4, another one, Mr. Perfect. What's worse? What's a better way to piss people off than going around saying, I can do everything you can do, only I can do it perfectly. And Mr. Perfect did it all perfectly. That's what pissed you off. Mr. Perfect, he was definitely one of those guys that he was every bit as good as he said he was. And he could have easily captured that world title and ran with it. I honestly think he could have been a guy that could have beaten Hulk Hogan and made it believable. People would have bought it. People would have bought the fact that Mr. Perfect beat the immortal Hulk Hogan, the undefeatable Hulk Hogan. And people would have stood up and said, you know what? I could see that. And then you just go with the rematch, the big rematch, because that's the big payoff, is the rematch. Number 3, again, I agree with this one too. Jake Roberts. I could see it. Yeah. Again, Jake Roberts is one of those guys that just everything worked for him. He had a great character, tremendous character. He could wrestle. He could talk. Guy was a talker, and he just sucked people in. In fact, one of my favorite lines in his DVD, he's doing a promo with somebody, and he says, I'm not out here, I don't yell and scream and throw myself out there because, I learned a long time ago that if a man has enough power and enough conviction, he can speak softly and everybody will listen. I love Jake Roberts quotes because they're just so cryptic, they're so awesome. And I would have loved to see him as world champion. WWE champion. I keep saying world champion, I mean WWE champion. Let's just get that up. Now, the number 2 and the number 1. Right off the bat, I'm going to admit, I'm a little biased on this. But, I'll get to that in a minute. Number 2 on their list, Rowdy Roddy Piper. And their number 1 was Harley Race. Now, I'm not going to say anything bad about Harley Race. I can't say anything bad about Harley Race. Guy's a legend. Guy's one of the best. But if we're talking WWE, WWF superstars that should have been world champion, I don't think anybody else out there could argue the fact that Rowdy Roddy Piper was robbed of so many chances to be world champion. I honestly think they should have flip-flopped those. I really think Piper should have been number 1. Because if you look at Rowdy Roddy Piper's track record, in the 1980s, early 80s when the WWF was starting to boom, he was the heel. He was the benchmark for heels. If you weren't even close to his level, like Piper's here and you're here, if you want to be a good heel in wrestling, you need to be right here or matched up. I don't think even you could match it up. You'd have to be at least here to even come close to being as good as Rowdy Roddy Piper was. This is a guy who started riots in arenas all around the country. He would piss people off to the point where they want to jump the guardrail to go at you, to the point where they're waiting for him outside of the arena to beat him up. And the best part about it was Roddy Piper loved that shit. Every single time he did it, he said, I did my job. That's more money for me, because now they're going to have to come back and see me. They're going to have to pay to see me get beat up again. And again, going back to his DVD, which is a great one, he talks about WrestleMania 1, when him and Hogan had their tag team match. It was Piper and Paul Orndorff against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. Huge thing. And Piper said there's a lot of contention, and a lot of arguments about who drew WrestleMania. Who made that the big event? Was it Hogan or was it Piper? And then they cut to Hogan saying that Roddy Piper wasn't... Roddy Piper likes to think that he is the main reason why. And he's not. He's nowhere even close to the main reason. Because Vince McMahon and we were the big parts of it. And Piper, he was just a player in all of it. But he likes to take, full credit for it. And then Piper comes on and says something that actually makes sense, because Hulk Hogan's a fucking idiot. He says, you're not there to see Roddy Piper. And you're not there to see Hulk Hogan. You're there to see Hulk Hogan beat the shit out of Roddy Piper. That's wrestling. You're not there just to see one guy. You're not there to see two guys. You're there to see one guy beat the shit out of the other guy. That's how it is. That's what I bitch about so many times. Is guy has belt, guy wants belt. They fight. You want to see one guy beat the other guy. Wrestling. Hulk Hogan is involved in a huge feud with Andre the Giant. They have their big colossal WrestleMania match. But there's controversy at it. Because Andre says that he pinned Hogan. Everybody says, no, he didn't. But then they have the video that says, look, his shoulders were down. The referee counted 3. The referee, their ruling should stand. That was a 3 count. And that storyline went on all the way to February of the next year, where they had their rematch. And that's when Andre beat Hogan. There was a corrupt referee, of course, but that's wrestling. And nobody was better at it than Roddy Piper was, heel-wise. Nobody. I don't care who the hell you are, or what argument you give me. No. Your argument is invalid, because Roddy Piper was the man. He was the heel to beat all heels. And he's my personal pick for the top 20 guys that never held the WWE title. It's a travesty that man never held it. If I had to go through this list and pick my top 3 anyway, Piper would be number 1, Ted DiBiase would be number 2, and probably Mr. Perfect at 3, and then just to round it off, Rick Rude at 4 and Ricky Steamboat at 5. Those would be my top 5. But it's an okay list. They had a lot of other different lists on there. I don't like really going on here and reading lists because it's kind of a cop-out. But I want to try and get WTF back up and running again. So I'll have a couple more that I want to talk about. Try and get through the state of fucking wrestling nowadays. In fact, that'll probably be my next video. The state of fucking wrestling nowadays. Yeesh. It is bad. It's worse than it's ever been. So, hope you guys missed me. If you didn't, oh well. But, yeah. I'll talk about pretty much the state of wrestling currently. The date, I'll say whatever the date is at the time I start to film it, and we'll just go from there. So, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later.